Welcome back, virtual circuit riders. We want to continue the story of the spread of Methodism into the life of the mind today. We don't usually think of Methodism, particularly in its early American forms and reforms, as being dedicated to the life of the mind. We have Francis Asbury's own comments when asked, how did you take a company of uneducated preachers and turn them into such effective preachers, although many of them are very unlettered? He said, we read everything we can and immediately share everything we know. A penny used is better than a pound squandered. And so this philosophy of education has continued throughout American Methodist history, joining with vital piety and knowledge as a way to disciple the mind through small groups and later through colleges. Charles Wesley wrote the hymn, Come Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, in which his famous line, unite the pair so disjoined, knowledge and vital piety. This has always been the challenge. Even back to John Wesley's day, it was not enough to have justifying and sanctifying grace, but the path to perfection and perfect love and wholeness involved joining knowledge with vital piety, bringing them together as personal holiness would lead to social holiness. This required a pilgrimage of knowledge as well towards perfection. But it was difficult for Methodists to come to terms with that, and in America at least, we have in our earliest history, Methodist knowledge and vital piety tended to start with magazine distribution, battle for many years, starting in Philadelphia and then moving to New York. This man, John Dickens, who was at the Christmas conference, was named the first book steward. He was a prominent Methodist preacher in Philadelphia, and he had to personally go into his pocket to keep the book concern from going under. But by the 1820s, under the ecclesial leadership of Nathan Bangs, who was also head of the Methodist Mission Board, the spread of magazines began to take off. You can see the 1820s to 1840s as the first phase of Methodist, American Methodist lay middle class and rising class wealth. And so magazines spread not only the good news but also ideas, and by the Civil War, Methodist readership as far as magazine circulation and newspapers such as the Christian Advocates were the largest circulation of any organization in America. We know that today, since 1808 and the restrictive rules of the Constitution, the profit margin from the Methodist Book House or the publishing company have always been dedicated to the pensions of retired preachers. The second phase of Methodist education centered around the Sunday school, and again, 1827, the Sunday School Union was founded. This man here, John Vincent, later becomes bishop, takes the prevailing technology of the printing press and begins to use graded lessons in the Sunday school. So Sunday school takes off as a intentional way to bring knowledge with vital piety. The catechism was also used as Sunday school material for various age groups. We don't usually think of Methodists using catechism, but from the 1850s until about the formation of the Methodist Church in 1939, the reunification of the Southern, Northern, and the NPC, catechisms were printed. But always the Sunday school provided these cheap leaflets, graded appropriately, and you can see 2.5 million of these were created. So Methodist education took place in earliest phases as the congregations are forming. People began to be less interested in simply sharing their testimony in small classes. Sunday school takes over from 1827, harnesses itself to technology, and ultimately this leads to the end of the class meeting. Another early abortive attempt to found colleges from the Christmas Conference in 1784, Francis Asbury and Thomas Coke laid the foundations for Cokesbury College in Abingdon, Maryland. And you can see how you get Cokesbury as our book distributing agent, and Abingdon is the actual press for the United Methodist Church, hailing from Abingdon, Maryland. This Cokesbury College was formed. It only lasted for 7 or 8 years. It burned down in 1795, and from the start it was under criticism from John Wesley, who believed that the British Methodists founded schools for young persons like Kingswood, but he criticized Coke and Asbury for founding colleges, thinking that since they'd become bishops, they needed to one-up John Wesley. The school never really attracted enough students. It burned down under suspicious circumstances in 1795, and it would really be another 25 years before Methodism built colleges. This came as a result of the rising wealth of Methodist laity in the 1820s, beginning to demand the Methodist Church, if it is to be a respectable church, to provide colleges for its sons and much later daughters. So it was the laity that demanded more education, and ultimately seminaries also at a much later date. The Methodists, up until the 1820s and 1830s, were more successful at founding what were called academies, high schools and primary schools. But the college building craze needed to wait until the 1820s, 1830s to wait for laity to amass enough disposable income to become benefactors for these various colleges. Augusta College here in Augusta, Kentucky, early Methodist college. Wesleyan Female College, 1843, I believe. We'll go back. I'll just show you on our book the various early Methodist colleges. This man here, Stephen Olin, was one of the great minds of Methodism, kind of one of our great scholars. He was originally appointed by the South Carolina Conference to the University of Georgia as an English teacher. That was an appointment. I don't think you can get an appointment as a Methodist minister anymore to the University of Georgia. But Stephen Olin ultimately went on to lead as president Wesleyan College. I believe it's in Middlebury, Connecticut. It was sort of considered our Harvard. This is Wofford College here, even though the words, the way I edited them, make it look like this is Wofford. But this is Wofford, where many Candler students hail from and many United Methodist ministers come from today. Let's see a map of all the many colleges. So moving to the historical atlas of the Methodist movement, you can see here the vast number of East Coast colleges. And you can just go through, we've already mentioned Wesleyan, which was considered our northern Harvard institution, Wofford. Augusta was one of the earliest that survived in the Ohio River Valley. We'll look at the seminaries in a separate situation, but you've got McKendree College very early in Lebanon, Illinois. We have one student who here at Candler at present who is a McKendree grad. Many of these Methodist historic colleges have produced very many Methodist pastors. During the 19th century, this was the liberal education provided by schools such as Randolph-Macon, Emory and Henry in Virginia. The good liberal undergraduate degree was all that was needed to, in terms of educational attainment, to become a Methodist Episcopal minister. You would add to that obviously probationary membership under a mentor, a presiding elder on circuits, but you would couple that with the course of study, which was the main reading course that uh, continued to be the primary gateway into Methodist ministry even until the 1950s. It's not until 1956 that a graduate seminary degree is generated by the General Conference as the primary means of entry into ministry. You can see Wesleyan Female College, which is in Macon, is the first undergraduate school in North America to grant a baccalaureate degree to women, 1839. Again, these are the wealthy daughters of Methodist laypersons begin to demand education as well. We'll look at the number of the seminaries in a minute, but Vanderbilt University, 1875, was created by the Methodist Episcopal Church South, Bishop McTeer, whose second wife was cousin to Cornelius Vanderbilt, the shipping magnate, and Vanderbilt was impressed that McTeer, the bishop, didn't come money grubbing to him, and so Vanderbilt gave him this money. Although Vanderbilt was not considered, he was not a Methodist, and he was not particularly spiritual. We'll talk about Emory's rise in later on, but you can see even out west, schools such as USC, University of Southern California, is actually a Methodist school. And then the Claremont School of Theology grew out of their religion department. So we don't really think of the USC Trojans, that great football power, as Methodist, but they're a private school. And the 1820s were a time where annual conferences were charged by the General Conference to establish schools, and so you can see that American Methodists have followed suit. One of the earliest schools on the West Coast, Willamette University today, was formed very early out west, 1844. And you can see the various names: Birmingham Southern in Birmingham, 1856. Before the Civil War, 32 successful colleges were founded. We forget sometimes that Syracuse here, that great basketball power, is also a Methodist, historic Methodist school. We'll look at the seminaries later. There's also a whole section of historic black colleges. We will look at the founding of the historic African American Methodist institutions when we get past the Civil War, because most of them were founded by the Freedmen's Aid Society and other missionary organizations after the Civil War. So we'll take that up in a later discussion. But it's important to recognize that higher education initially served the lay sons and daughters of the growing wealthy class, or at least the middle class of Methodism. And today, we have 99 schools with degree programs as of 2008, although American Methodists have founded over 1,200 in their history. We've not always been successful, but our highest schools of education, I'm biased, but Emory and Vanderbilt and SMU and Wesleyan, although a host of them are excellent, I believe our upper tier will compete with any still in the world, although the mission has changed from bringing knowledge and vital piety to discipling the life of the mind, which United Methodists of many stripes can still agree on. John Wesley was accused of too much education by one woman in his small group, and he said, God can use my knowledge, but I don't think God can put up with your ignorance. And so we have a tension between knowledge, vital piety, a life of simplicity and a life of dedicated intellectual service. And each generation has to discover anew how to create institutions that serve both knowledge and vital piety.